Good morning and welcome to UUCC, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. We are a group of spiritual free thinkers who gather to celebrate life, build community, and better the world. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. I'm Pat Mells, your worship associate for this morning. Our service will be led by Gwedolyn Olton, who is the director of the M.K. Gandhi Institute for Nonviolence. This service is also being live streamed to our YouTube channel. We will plan on continuing with hybrid worship services throughout the church year, so you can join us each week here in person, on Zoom, or later on YouTube as you prefer. If this is your first visit, welcome. We invite you to sign the visitor's book in the entryway. And whether it's your first visit or your 1,000th, we're glad that you came. I have a few announcements to share with you today. Please wear a mask. Masks are available for anyone who forgot one. RE and childcare will be provided this morning by Aaron Waller and Kaya Mells. We will be collecting the cards for Joys and Sorrows after the first hymn. Please fill them out or type them into the chat box on Zoom if you have something you would like to share. Gwedolyn Olton has offered to lead a roundtable discussion on healthy communication practices in communities for us during the potluck meal following the service. All are invited, whether or not you remember to bring a dish to pass. Childcare will be available for an extra hour during the roundtable discussion. On December 24th, a Christmas service led by Eileen will be added to our YouTube channel. There will be no in-person or online worship on December 25th. We'd like to share with you a video provided by UUSC to introduce the second in this year's guests from the Guest at Your Table program. We will also include a short video to introduce 2 more guests over the next 2 weeks during announcements, the announcement section of our service.
Hi, my name is Jan Stanovic, and I'm one of the co-directors of Gwedolyn Empowerment Project, and I coordinate Direct Services Program. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about solidarity in times of crisis and what does it mean for our organization. At Gwedolyn Empowerment Project, solidarity and mutual care are one of the core values. We put a lot of effort in creating space for our members who are LGBTQ folks directly impacted by immigration system, where they feel that they belong and that they have agency and power to rebuild their lives and communities once they come to New York City. Solidarity means to us various things, from daily peer support, where members support each other during hard emotional situations like court hearings, loss of someone that they loved, to transphobic or homophobic violence, writing letters to our members who are still in detention, as well as during happy moments, moments of victory, when they got released and are messaging us from outside, when they finally received their work permit or won their asylum, or just when they share daily messages on our WhatsApp group saying, "Good morning, hope you all are going to have a great day," and they are sharing a funny meme. Those big and small signs of solidarity are so important from our perspective because we come from communities that went and are still going through a lot of violence, discrimination, and hurt. And for our members, a lot of days still feel like crisis. One of QDEP's hope is that through those daily acts of solidarity and mutual care, we can rebuild trust in other people and create a community that will have each other backs no matter what is happening. We are inspired by prison abolition movement, transformative justice movement, and work of Black feminists like Angela Davis, Bell Hooks, or Audre Lorde that search for tools and ways to build strong and solid movements and communities that are accountable, honest, and loving. Solidarity for us is also a sort of communal healing, a daily practice of empathy, patience, listening, and learning. Daily practice of failing to understand each other but not giving up and trying again and again. Solidarity
If you're here with us in person today, you can take a box or envelope home with you and give it a place at your table or another central spot in your home to remind you to add what you can donate to the program over the next few weeks. Bring the box or envelope back to church on Sunday, December 18th, or send your donation directly to UUSC online at uusc.org/give-to-guest, or by mailing a check to UUSC with guest or GAYT in the memo field and send it to UUSC PO Box 808, Newark, New Jersey 07101. If you are joining us today on Zoom or later on YouTube and would like donation materials or a brochure introducing our guests delivered to your home, you can contact Danielle Lyon at danielle.a.lyon@gmail.com. Are there any other announcements for the good of the community? Dorothy?
Thank you to everybody who's been contributing to the Justice for Migrant Families effort for the dignity bags for people being released from detention in Batavia. We have all the cash that we need to complete the project now, so thank you all for your generosity.
Good morning. I just wanted to remind everybody, our bake sale last month was an amazing success, and next week we are having a cookie sale. So same format, same setup. If you are interested in baking cookies, just bring a plate of whatever it is that you are interested in bringing. And if you are worshiping remotely, let us know if you are interested in participating, because we will set up a delivery service. Thanks.
As we prepare to be fully together, I remind you to silence your phones and devices. We now enter a space of worship. I'd like to invite Oren up to help with the chalice lighting. I invite you to join with me in our chalice lighting words as the flame is lit. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth, celebration of the life we share together.
Good morning. So one of my communities of practice is with my colleagues at the Gandhi Institute, and we have this system for giving and receiving feedback with one another, where every couple of months or more frequently, if we're feeling like we need it and it would be helpful, We just share with one another what we've noticed the other person is doing and how it's impacting us, what needs of ours are met or unmet by some of the ways that we're experiencing them. Yeah, and the expectation is that we'll share not just good things, but the hard things too. We really push ourselves to say, okay, but what isn't working in the way that I'm interacting with you? What could I do to make things easier for you? Or what things am I doing that, yeah, aren't landing well for you? So the things that the other person is doing that can be painful, all of this allows information to flow between us. So we try to think about feedback as information. So I'm just wrapping up a round of feedback sessions this month, and I've been really grateful for the learning that's come out of it. For instance, I learned that one of the ways that I was communicating in meetings with one of my colleagues was just bugging him sometimes. You know, I had a way of adding in after he had talked that made him feel like I didn't care about what he was saying or felt like I had something more important. So that was good information to know. I wouldn't have known that if he hadn't told me. So I was really grateful. And then a piece of feedback that felt unexpected to me had to do with me riding my bike to work. Beginning in July, my partner and I decided to go down to one car, and I bought a bike because I'd been thinking about bike commuting for a long time, and I've been bike commuting as much as possible. And this really aligned with my values and my principles and some of the principles of the folks at the Gandhi Institute too, around sustainability and decreasing some of our materials, and also around movement and fun. So it's been really fun, but it's also been hard. There's a lot of days where I actually really don't want to ride my bike and I just want to call a lift, or I imagine how I used to just like throw all my stuff in the back of my car, carefree about the amount of weight I was putting back there. Yeah, and so I ended up getting all this feedback from colleagues that it really mattered to them that I was riding my bike. I was surprised because I was like, well, how does that affect them, right? And they appreciated different things. They appreciated that I made a decision and was going for it without knowing all the ways that it would end up. For instance, I'm not sure what I'm going to do in the snow. They appreciated the values alignment with our values in the environment. Yeah, and they appreciated that sometimes I didn't want to do it and I did it anyway. And this feedback ended up being really nourishing for me. If I didn't have this information, if I was just operating on the feedback loops in my head about it being hard, and maybe it wasn't worth it, and it was taking too long, I could get discouraged and I could rationalize myself right out of something that would be giving up on my values and some principles that are actually really important to me. So opening up ways for people to tell us how we're affecting them directly brings us closer to community. We need to hear from one another to grow, and we need feedback for our group to grow. It's why we have communities of practice. So please join us in hymn 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
Let's begin by just singing it all together 2 times. Please rise as you're willing. Here we go at the beginning. You also may know that the choir has been getting together the last couple of weeks to practice some songs for next week's service. So we have a special round for all of us today. I'm going to sing at the beginning, and I will sing with anyone who is not in the choir. So we will start at the beginning. Anyone who's not in the choir can start at the beginning. And then we'll keep going, and we'll sing it probably 3 times. And don't be surprised if someone next to you doesn't sing, and then suddenly starts singing a little later because they're in the choir and they're ready to sing it in a three-part round. So we'll see what happens. All right, ready? If you're singing with me, we'll take a breath and then we'll sing together here.
Well, that sounded great from up here. So I'm looking forward to next week in the choir. We are a community that holds one another in our celebrations and in our pain. We welcome you to share your joys and sorrows by writing them down on the card you found on your chair and placing it in the basket when it comes by, or by typing in the chat box in Zoom. Know that wherever your heart is, or whatever your heart is holding today, whether shared or not, we are with you.
So this story is called Old Joe and the Carpenter. Old Joe lived way out in the countryside, and he had one neighbor. They'd been friends all their lives long. It seemed that they had grown old together, and now that their spouses were gone and their children raised and living lives of their own in other places, all they had left were their farms and each other. But for the first time in their long friendship, they'd had an argument, and it was a silly argument. It was over a stray calf that neither one really needed. It seemed as though the calf was found on Joe's neighbor's land, and so he claimed it as his own. But old Joe said, no, now that calf has the same markings as my favorite cow, and I recognize it as being mine. Well, they were both a bit stubborn. So the upshot of it was they just stopped talking to each other. That happened about a week before, and it seemed that a dark cloud had settled over old Joe until there came a knock on his door. He wasn't expecting anybody that morning, and as he opened the door, he saw standing before him a young man who had a box of wooden tools on his shoulder. He had a kind voice and rather dark, deep eyes, and he said, I'm a carpenter, and I'm looking for a bit of work. Maybe you'd have some small jobs here and there that I can help with. Old Joe wasn't the kind of fellow to take someone just right off. So he brought him on into the kitchen and sat him down and gave him some stew that he had on the back of the stove. There was some homemade bread. It was baked fresh early that morning, some fresh churned butter and homemade jam. While they were sitting and eating and talking, Joe decided that he liked this fellow. And he said, I do have a job for you. Look right there through my kitchen window. See that farm over there across the way? That's my neighbor's place. And can you see that creek running right down there between our property lines? That creek, it wasn't there last week. My neighbor did that to spite me. He took his plow up there with a tractor and he just dug a big old furrow from the upper pond and then he flooded it. Well, I want you to do one better. Since he wants us divided that way, you go out there and build me a fence, a big, tall fence, so I won't even have to see his place anymore. And the carpenter said, well, if you have the lumber and the nails, I've got my tools and I'll be able to do the job, just like you said. Joe had to go on to town to get some supplies, so he hitched up the wagon and showed the carpenter where everything was in the barn. And that carpenter, well, he carried everything he needed down to the creek side and he started to work. And oh, his work went smooth and fast. He did his measuring and his sawing and his nailing, and it was about sunset when old Joe returned and the carpenter had finished his work. When old Joe pulled up in that wagon, his eyes opened wide and his mouth fell open because there wasn't a fence there at all. It was a bridge going from one side of the creek to the other. It had handrails and all. It was a fine piece of work. And his neighbor was just starting to cross the other side of the bridge with his hand stuck out. And he was saying, Joe, you're quite a fellow to build this bridge. I've never been able to do that. I'm so glad we're going to be friends again. And Joe, he put his arm around his neighbor and he said, oh, that calf is yours. I've known it all the time. I just want to be your friend too. About that time, the carpenter started putting his tools in the box and then hoisted it up on his shoulder and started to walk away. And Joe said, no, now wait, come on back. I want you to stay on. I got a lot of projects for you. The carpenter smiled back and said, I'd like to stay, but I've got more bridges to build. So we walked on and there ends the tale.
Now is the time in our service to join together in the spiritual practice of generosity. Our gifts of both time and money support our church in its work. Each week, we would like to spotlight a group or committee, thank them for their gift of time, and invite others who are interested to join them in supporting our church and programs. This week, the group is the Stewardship Committee. So far, it's been focused mainly on running a successful pledge campaign, but there are many other things we could be doing during the year as well. And Erin is full of ideas. So if you would like to be a part of the committee, you can talk to Erin or to me or to Lynn Overgart. And we sure enjoy having your help. But we thank you all for your pledges as well. So you are helping anyway. So. 1/4 of our plate collection for the darkness season goes to Light Hill, an organization that provides loving, compassionate, specialized care for those who are terminally ill and for their family and loved ones. You can give to this morning's offering by placing cash or a check in the basket, or if you are joining us from home, by visiting canandaiguauu.org/connection/donate, or mailing a check to UUCC at 3024 Cooley Road, Canandaigua, New York, 14424. In either case, make a note that your gift is intended for today's offering. We now gratefully accept the offering. We have a card of concern saying, thinking of Jeannie Smith and her family today. And I will also drop a stone for these and all the joys and sorrows left in the silence of our hearts. Whatever is in your heart today, we are with you. We are with you. At this time, if there are any children who would like childcare, please go downstairs with Aaron and Kaya.
I really like that there's a little sticker up here that says relax. So I want to invite us into a little meditation before we go on to other things together. So just want to invite you to find a comfortable seat, whatever feels good for you. Maybe it feels good to have your feet flat on the floor. Sometimes I like to pretend there's a sort of string going up through my spinal column and it's just being lifted, helps me line up. But yeah, a way that feels comfortable and is an expression of your own human dignity. Then taking some breaths through the belly if you're able. Just going to invite you to feel the seat that you're on or where your feet are on the floor. Breathe in and out slowly in a way that feels best to you. I want to invite you to call to mind whoever in your life has been a wisdom teacher for you, past or present, someone you've met or not met. And holding them in your mind and heart, offer some gratitude to this teacher. May our time together in this day honor their teachings. And now call to mind a loved one who you feel a lot of ease with. Maybe a person, maybe an animal, a dear friend, just someone that you find it really easy to be around, really easy to love. Breathing in and out slowly. Just hold this person in your awareness. Now send them some appreciation for being who they are in your life. May our time together in this day water the garden of that beautiful relationship. And now call to mind someone who you struggle with. Someone from your past or present. Someone who you don't find easy to be around. Maybe brings up a sense of conflict for you. And just hold them in your awareness. And now imagine sending them some kindness. Maybe a glass of water when they're thirsty. Maybe a good night's sleep when they've been sleepless. Maybe a favorite meal. May our time together in this day plant seeds of future ease with this person. And now taking just a couple more breaths, bring your awareness back into this space, whatever space you're in. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes, maybe wiggle a little bit, stretch your arms, do something that feels good for your body. I'm so grateful to be here with you all today. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, and I'm really grateful to be invited to speak on this theme of underground, which I think is really rich. So I work at the Gandhi Institute, right? And the Institute itself does a lot of things, but I myself mostly work with folks who are in conflict or struggling with communication in some ways. So I thought I would talk a little bit about different ways we might practice underground communication and why these patterns of underground communication might happen, and yeah, maybe what we can do to break out of them. So first I want to say, what do we even mean by underground communication? Maybe you've got some ideas. I think there's probably a lot of examples, but I thought I would just think about three or name three. So maybe back channeling, indirect messages, and gossip could be three. Like I said, there's probably more. And by back channeling, I just mean sort of secret conversations of disagreement and dissent that happen away from the whole group. So maybe we don't like something that's going on in a group, but we just have side conversations about it. We don't actually bring it to the whole group, or maybe we don't bring it to the folks that might be able to do something about it. And by indirect messages, I would mean giving feedback, usually like complaints or something, to a person, but indirectly. So one example of this might be, actually was working with another faith community a few months ago, and the minister there and some of the other faith leaders were having this thing happen where people would bring a complaint to them, but it was too non-specific to know what to do about it, and they wouldn't say who had the complaint. So it made it really hard for them to ask questions or get clarity about what to do about it. So this might be phrases like "I've heard" or "some people are saying." And then I think y'all probably know what gossip is, right? It would be talking about people behind their backs, usually with something salacious or mean-spirited. We're not usually gossiping about someone by saying something really glowing like, "Did you hear Kim's garden is thriving and she's giving all her food to her neighbors?" So yeah, maybe a quick show of hands if you feel like these strategies are good strategies. Well, maybe sometimes. There could be some reasons, right? I'm actually glad I saw a couple maybe. And I recently learned, and I'm sorry I didn't know this already. I don't know a lot about the Unitarian practice and faith communities, but I learned that you all have these 7 principles as part of your community. And I was also really pumped to read that you have them in language for children. Because I think if we've got things in a language for children, then that's probably the simplest, fast way for many of us to read it too. So I was looking at these first 3. We believe that each and every person is important. We believe that all people should be treated fairly and kindly. And we believe that we should accept one another and keep on learning together. So another way I could have asked the other question is if we think that those underground strategies are supportive of the principles. those first three principles. So I probably don't need to spend time convincing you that these strategies are maybe not in alignment with those principles or the world that we want to create. But I think if I asked if you use any of these strategies, some of you would say, no, definitely not. But I know other people that do, and they shouldn't. Or we might say, yeah, I do, and it's so bad, and I need to stop, and then begin whatever our own version of like self-flagellation is about it. But I really don't think we need any more shame in general in our society. And it also doesn't really work well as a behavioral change agent or an educational tool. So instead, I want us to explore for a couple of minutes why we even use these strategies. Because I think understanding their root will help us catch when we're participating in them and to try something else. So I think ultimately we use these kind of back channeling and gossip and the indirect messages because we're just trying to get some needs met. And these are just the tools that seem most accessible to us. So they're what we reach for. And I'm not just talking about obviously food, water, and shelter, right? I know Dr. Maslow is widely credited with coming up with the hierarchy of needs. And so this hierarchy was in like a little triangle, and it would say in this pyramid, and it would say, food, water, and shelter is at the bottom. And then there's like safety. And then it goes up from there into things like belonging, and then, self-actualization and transcendence. So there's other steps in between, but some critical things are left out of this model, at least the way that it's usually taught. The first is that Dr. Maslow never actually put these things in a hierarchy. that was added to the model later on. And he was actually just really trying to understand and communicate what he saw as an abundance of self-actualized people in the communities of the Siksika, also called the Blackfoot, who he lived with for a while. And he tried to communicate that we can only reach our most authentic and thriving selves within the context of community. It's really community actualization, not self. So we have all these basic needs that necessitate being with other people, things like connection and understanding and belonging and love and a lot more. But we are living under multiple intersecting and interdependent systems of oppression, and not in true community often. And so we're left trying to get these relational needs met under these systems that create a lot of challenge, and it kind of warps the way that we do things. So we might end up trying to get our needs met in ways that are almost counterproductive to our higher selves. It reminds me a little bit of when I'm, super hungry and maybe I haven't done a great job meal planning or prepping food. And I just reach for like candy or a cupcake or something with a lot of sugar, right? There's no shame in the sugar game. There's like good times for sugar, right? But if I'm like really hungry, that's just going to give me a little bit of temporary relief. That might ultimately make me more hungry. So when we snack on the cupcakes of gossip and back channeling, when what we're really needing is like community and connection and mutuality and understanding, it can end up being really unsatisfying and ultimately not helpful in creating community. Yeah, so from my perspective and my understanding and working with folks, we're just trying to get needs met when we use these underground strategies. When I gossip, I might be trying to connect. When I back channel, I might also be trying to connect, but I might have learned that what's important to me doesn't matter, that like I don't matter, my voice doesn't matter in a community. So why would I bring my concerns to the group or to our leaders? And when I give indirect messages, I usually have feedback to share. I have information to share with the group about how things are going for me, and I'm trying to be understood. So I just want to give us all a lot of compassion for doing the best that we can. And I want us to invite us into community instead of, and lean into togetherness and trust, that we actually can do things differently. I love the invitation to community because it's really powerful and it's compelling. Like I want to be in communities of practice. I want to be with people who want group actualization, that want community actualization, that want all of us to be our best selves. It's powerful to be in that space, but it also takes a lot of work and practice to tend to it. And I think it takes some bravery because not all of the antidotes to these underground methods are comfortable, and I think they all require a little bit of vulnerability. So what can we do to start to disrupt some of these underground communication patterns? I thought I might just walk through some practices at the individual level and some at the group level. And I think it's awesome that you all have these principles, the 7 principles, because it gives you a good place to start, even before some of the strategies I'll name. Anytime, you're communicating with someone and maybe you notice something doesn't feel good, or you've got some little radar going off inside of yourself, some intuition, you can ask yourself, is what I'm doing right now moving me closer to those principles or further away? So bringing a lot of noticing and reflecting to our conversations is, I think, the first step. So first, I want to offer that we kind of change our framework around feedback. I think many of us are brought up to think about getting feedback in this sort of punishment or reward model. We think about grades, we think about like performance evaluations at work. We're either going to be rewarded for something we're doing or punished. But feedback is really meant as information. It's just giving us that info about how we're impacting other people and how they're impacting us so that we can change or not and just have more understanding. So changing our ideas about what feedback and what conflict as a result of feedback can mean, I think is helpful. And then to start to notice our patterns of when we're speaking up or holding back when we have feedback. Who are we speaking up to if we have something that's not working for us? Who are we talking to about it? And what kinds of things are we talking about? I like journaling as a tool, but sometimes, there's other ways we might kind of start to bring some awareness with that. And then, I think we all at times need support from others before having direct conversations. Sometimes when I'm working with people in conflict, they'll have gotten the advice like, well, you just need to talk to this person that you're in conflict with. And it's often not so easy for us. We're not really sure where to start. Things feel really cloudy in our heads, or we think we're too angry. And so we might go to get support. But pay attention to who you talk to before you maybe try to have a direct conversation. Notice who you talk to when you're upset. Are you going to someone who's just going to jump on your bandwagon and agree with everything you say and fire you up? And I like to think about, who am I choosing that's going to help bring my best self to the forefront? If you have a tough conversation, another strategy I like is to practice. Practice in your own head and then role play with someone you trust before going into it. And also I say for myself and for others that we question the thoughts that we have that lead us down paths of avoidance, and telling ourselves things like, this will blow over, it'll get better eventually. If I talk to them, it's not going to matter, it won't make a difference. I hear these patterns over and over again, and they keep us really stuck. And what I like to remind myself and others is that we actually have a gift to share when we have feedback or we have a conflict. We have a piece of information that that person doesn't have unless we enter into that space with them. And we tend to avoid things until they're intolerable. And then there's an explosion, which in a lot of cultures of politeness, which many of us are part of, and communities of politeness, where the norm is to just be polite instead of have the tough conversation, the explosion means exiting the community. Often it means we just leave instead of trying to work it out. Okay, so I also want to name a couple practices for talking to other people, because when we're talking about these underground practices, it kind of takes 2 to tango, right? So if my friend is coming to me and is beginning to gossip or back channel, I want to know, what are the strategies that I could do to be a good support and to help us be in good community together. Yeah, so some of my favorite practices for these are, if someone comes to you with a complaint or disagreement, to notice how you respond, just like with the other practices. I like to ask myself, am I pouring gasoline or water onto this fire right now? And is what I'm saying amping this person up and strengthening their anger, or am I helping them see what could be best and what the next wise move might be? Listen for what's most important to the person about the conflict. What are they most valuing? and reflect these values back. You might say something like, wow, this thing, it's really important to you that things are equitable, right? So instead of just naming all the reasons that they're angry, name the value that you hear. Reflect back any positive strategies or skills that they might try. Ask them questions like, what do you think would help? What has worked in the past? If you didn't have to do it perfectly, what would you do? What would you most want to communicate to this person? Okay, I know we've got a potluck after with more opportunity to chat about strategies. So I'm going to leave the strategies there. It's enough practices for now, but I want to close with one final practice that often feels like my first and most important one. And it's one I don't often share in workshops I do on communication. Yeah, so in this last practice is something I say to myself in different ways and at different times, but I think the gist of it stays generally the same, and it's a prayer. So I ask whatever I'm calling a higher power that day. Sometimes it's creative life force. Sometimes it's God. Sometimes it's great energy or universe. And I say something like, please help me be of service in this conversation. Help me listen deeply and with compassion for all who are in the conversation and all who are outside of it. Help me have compassion for all the people in the room with me and all the people who are not in the room with me. Help me to bring forth my best self to whatever is in front of me in service of our collective liberation. Help me to speak and act in such a way that invites the light of others to shine brilliantly. Thank you for the opportunity to have whatever this conversation is. Thank you.
Red lights are flashing on the highway. I wonder if we're gonna ever get home. I wonder if we're ever get home tonight. Everywhere the water is getting rough. Your best intentions may not be enough. I wonder if we're gonna ever get home tonight. If you break down, I'll drive out and find you. If you forget my love, I'll try to remind you and stay by you when it don't come easy. I don't know nothing except change will come. Year after year, what we do is undone. Time keeps moving from a crawl to a run. I wonder if we're ever get home. You're out there walking on the highway, and all of the signs get blown away. Sometimes you wonder if you're walking in the wrong direction. If you break down,
only love we were made for. If you break down, I'll drive out and find you. If you forget my love, I'll try to remind you and stay by you. Don't come easy. It don't come easy. When it don't come easy.
This is a quote I enjoy from Thich Nhat Hanh. Nothing can survive without food. Everything we consume acts either to heal us or to poison us. We tend to think of nourishment only as what we take in through our mouths, but what we consume with our eyes, our ears, our noses, our tongues, and our bodies is also food. The conversations going on around us and those we participate in are also food. May we leave here today ready to nourish ourselves and one another and our community. Please join us in the closing hymn, 323, Break Not the Circle of Enabling Love.
Please join me in our words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of the community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.